Some people can drain your energy, twist your words, or make you doubt your own reality. And it often takes years to notice what is actually happening. But there are early signs you can spot in just a few minutes if you know exactly what to look for. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're exploring the subtle psychology behind manipulative behavior and how to recognize it before it affects your peace of mind. We often hear terms like toxic thrown around loosely, but there's a specific set of personality traits that psychologists suggest are often linked to manipulative behavior, commonly referred to as the dark triad. Now, before we go any further, I want to be very clear that we are exploring behavior patterns here, not diagnosing anyone or labeling people as bad. Dark triad traits refer to three specific tendencies: narcissistic traits, which involve a need for admiration; Machiavellian traits, which involve strategic calculation and manipulation; and antisocial tendencies, which often manifest as a lack of empathy. But here's the part most people never notice. These traits often present themselves not as aggression or cruelty, but as intense charm and charisma. Researchers describe these personalities as socially skilled and highly calibrated to read your emotions, which is exactly why they're so difficult to spot early on. We aren't looking for a villain from a movie. We are looking for subtle disconnects in communication that leave you feeling off balance. If you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling confused, drained, or unsure what just happened, you're not alone, and it's often your intuition picking up on these signals. Let's start with the first major sign, which typically happens in the first few minutes of meeting someone, or starting a deeper conversation, and that is what psychologists often call strategic charm or excessive flattery. When you meet someone with high manipulative tendencies, they often want to lower your defenses quickly. They might offer compliments that feel just a little too personal too soon, or they might claim you have a special connection that they've never felt before. While this can feel wonderful in the moment, it serves a specific psychological function. It creates a sense of indebtedness. Think about that for a second. When someone floods you with praise, you naturally feel a desire to please them or agree with them in return. But here's the subtle twist. A non-manipulative person builds rapport slowly, over time, respecting the natural pacing of trust. A manipulator, however, tries to fast-forward intimacy to gain influence. If you feel like someone is putting you on a pedestal within 5 minutes of meeting you, it is worth pausing and observing the dynamic. Are they seeing you, or are they projecting a fantasy onto you to get a specific reaction? This intense focus is often a prelude to a request or a boundary violation, which brings us to the next crucial signal. This next behavior is one many people overlook because it seems so minor, but it is perhaps the most reliable indicator of a controlling personality: subtle boundary testing. In the first few interactions, a person with manipulative tendencies will often check to see how firm your no is. This doesn't usually happen with a big request. It happens with something tiny. They might ask a slightly intrusive personal question, and if you deflect it, they might press just a little bit harder, disguised as playfulness. Or perhaps they insist on buying you a drink after you've said you're fine, or they touch your arm after you've pulled away. But these aren't accidents. Researchers suggest these are data-gathering moments. They're testing to see if you will prioritize their desire over your own comfort. And this is where things get interesting. If you hold your boundary, even a small one, watch their reaction closely. A healthy person will say, "Oh, my apologies," and move on without awkwardness. A person with dark triad tendencies, however, may show a micro-expression of irritation, or they might make a joke at your expense, implying that you are being uptight or boring. This is a critical moment of clarity. If you feel the need to apologize for having a boundary, that is a major red flag that you are dealing with a personality that views your autonomy as an obstacle rather than a right. Once a conversation progresses, another layer of manipulation often surfaces, and this involves how they handle information and responsibility. You might notice that while the conversation feels deep, it is actually incredibly one-sided in terms of vulnerability. They are gathering information about your fears, your past, and your insecurities. But if you pay close attention, you'll realize they're sharing very little genuine information about themselves. They might tell stories that paint them as a victim of others or as a hero, but they rarely reveal true weakness or accountability. This is often described as informational asymmetry. They want to know your buttons so they can push them later, but they keep their own cards hidden. But this next behavior often reveals someone's true intentions even more clearly than what they say. It is the subtle art of shifting responsibility. In a 5-minute conversation, you can sometimes spot this if a misunderstanding occurs. Let's say they misunderstand something you said. Instead of asking for clarification, they might twist your words to make you sound unreasonable, forcing you into a position of defense. This is a mild form of gaslighting. The goal is to make you explain yourself while they sit back and judge your explanation. If you find yourself over-explaining your simple preferences or feelings to someone you just met, take a step back. This dynamic, where you're chasing their approval and they're withholding it, is a classic signature of Machiavellian behavior. Many people don't realize they're being subtly manipulated until much later because the manipulator is excellent at what psychologists call induced guilt. Even in a short interaction, a manipulator can make you feel slightly guilty for things that aren't your fault. They might use a sad story or complain about how everyone always lets them down to trigger your empathy. This is a powerful hook. Empathy is a beautiful trait, but manipulative personalities often view empathy as a vulnerability to be exploited. They might imply that if you don't agree with them or help them, you're just like the bad people in their past. This creates a mild emotional pressure where you feel compelled to prove you are one of the good ones. This detail is easy to miss because it feels like you're just being kind. However, healthy relationships are based on mutual respect, not on proving your worthiness or fixing someone else's emotions. If you feel a heavy sense of obligation to a stranger or a new acquaintance, trust that discomfort. It is your brain signaling that the emotional exchange is unbalanced. As we move deeper into understanding these signs, we have to talk about the concept of provocation. This is rare in the first 5 minutes, but it can happen if the manipulator feels they aren't getting the control they want. They might make a backhanded compliment or subtle dig at your appearance, career, or choices. The purpose of this is to throw you off balance. When you're defensive or insecure, you're easier to lead. This is often referred to as negging in some circles, but psychologically, it's about lowering your status relative to theirs. And here's the sign most people completely overlook. They watch your reaction to others. How does this person speak to the waiter? How do they talk about their ex-partner or their boss? High-conflict personalities often have a history of turbulent relationships, and they will usually describe these conflicts as entirely the fault of the other person. If everyone in their past was crazy or abusive, and they were the innocent victim every single time, it is highly probable that you are speaking to the common denominator in those conflicts. Listen not just to the story, but to the lack of nuance. Real life is complex. Fabricated narratives are usually black and white. So, how do you handle this without becoming paranoid or cynical? The goal here isn't to walk around judging everyone you meet. It is to remain grounded in your own reality. Spotting manipulation isn't about outsmarting the other person. It's about staying connected to your own body and your own values. If your stomach drops, or if you feel a sudden brain fog where you can't think clearly, pause. That is your nervous system reacting to a lack of safety. You don't need to confront them. You don't need to call them out or diagnose them with a personality disorder. You simply need to slow down. Manipulators thrive on urgency and fast-paced emotional intensity. By slowing the interaction down, taking your time to answer, and refusing to be rushed into intimacy or agreement, you naturally repel those with harmful intentions. They will eventually get bored and move on to an easier target, leaving you safe and peaceful. Ultimately, these dark triad traits, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and lack of empathy, are patterns that rely on your participation to work. By understanding the early cues, such as forced teasing, boundary testing, rapid-fire charm, and the subtle shifting of blame, you reclaim your power. You stop being a source of supply and start being an observer of behavior. Remember, a healthy interaction should leave you feeling energized, heard, and respected, not drained, confused, or guilty. Spotting manipulation isn't about judging others. It's about staying grounded in your own self-worth, clarity, and emotional awareness. If this video brought you insight or clarity, and if you want to learn more about protecting your peace and understanding human psychology, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe for more in-depth discussions. Stay safe, trust your intuition, and I'll see you in the next video.